Hey fabulous fourth graders, I hope you're doing well today. I want to go over with you problems number 2 and 3 on page 169 of your Go Math textbook. Problem number 2 says divide, use partial quotients. Okay, so they're wanting you to use that first strategy that we went over in the previous video. And the original problem looks like this, okay? 225 divided by 3. And so if I'm using this partial quotient strategy, this is how I'm going to rewrite my problem to look so that I can see what I'm doing when I'm working it out as I go through step by step. The first thing that we want to do is try to look for familiar factors, okay, of 3 that would get us close to 225. If I cover up this third digit in the ones place here, this number 5, I see 22, okay? So I want to think in my mind, is there a number or a factor that I know of that I can multiply by 3 to get 22, okay? So one of the first things that I realize is, hey, I know that 3 times 7 is 21. And so I also know that 3 times 70 is 210. So that is pretty close to 225. So I'm going to try that first. That's the first thing, that's the first factor that I want to work with and determining what my quotient is for this problem. So I'm going to say 70 times 3, okay? And if I know that 7 times 3 is 21, then I know that 70 times 3 is 210. Because when we add that 10, we can add a 0 here also, okay? So all that stuff that when we were multiplying by 10s and you weren't sure why we were doing that, this is why. Okay, so I'm going to take this 210 and I'm going to subtract it from my original dividend, 225. Hopefully this is an easy subtraction problem for you. 5 minus 0 is 5, and 2 minus 1 is 1. All right, so as long as I still have a number here that is bigger than my divisor, I have to keep going. I'm not finished finding my quotient yet, okay? So 15 is definitely bigger than 3. And so I know that I've got to find a factor that if I multiply it by 3, or a factor of 3 that equals 15, all right? So do you know any? Oh, I hope that you immediately said, yes, yes, yes. I know that 5 times 3 is 15. And so I'm going to write 5 times 3 equals 15. Now let me share something with you really quickly. It is very, very important when you're doing this to make sure that you line your numbers up over here correctly according to place value, okay? So if you put your 5 over here underneath this 7, it's going to mess you up when you start adding in a few minutes. So make sure that you line them up according to place value, okay? All right, so my answer here to 5 times 3 is 15, and I can subtract 15 from here, which gives me, of course, 0, which means I don't have a remainder. There's nothing left to do here, okay? Had this number been less than 3, then that would be my remainder, okay? Because I couldn't keep going. But had this number been larger than 3, I would have had to continue to come up with factors of 3 and subtract them from here, okay? Subtract those products from here in order to find my answer before I was finished, okay? The last step in this is to add together your quotients, okay? Your partial quotients. 70 was one and 5 was another, okay? So that is 75, which means that our quotient is 75. It is also important that when I write my answer, I write it above 225 just like this, and then I line up my place value here as well, okay? This is very, very important because when we go to the next step of learning long division or standard algorithm, you must put these digits in the right place, okay? Do you notice how they're lined up according to place value? My ones are here and my tens are here, and there aren't any hundreds in this particular one, okay? So that would be a 0, but we don't put a 0 there because there's no need to. All right, so there is the first one. The second problem that they're wanting you to do is number 3, and they're wanting you to use that second strategy that was shown to you yesterday, okay? And that second strategy is using rectangular model, which we know of, and we called it in class most of the time area model or the box method. They want you to use that in order to find your partial quotients. And so I'm gonna use that strategy for this problem, okay? 428 divided by 4 equals what? That's our unknown. And so the way that I'm gonna do this problem, if I'm using the rectangular model or area model to find my partial quotients, is I'm gonna write my problem out like this. My divisor is 4. This is what I'm dividing by. And my dividend, which is the number that I'm dividing into, is 428. Okay, so when we used area model to do multiplication, we had a number here and a number here. And we had to multiply those together to get our number that goes in the middle. The reason this is called area model is because that's how you find the area of a rectangle. You multiply one side times another side, okay? You multiply the width times the height, or the length times the width, or height. Anyway, you multiply one of the sides by the other. And so what we have here is sort of a fill in the blank. We know what the number is on the inside. We know this is the product, but we don't know what the other factor is that goes here, okay? This is what we're missing. So I can divide this rectangle here into 2 different parts. If I can figure out a way that's easy for me to break that number apart to make it easier to work with. And one of the first things that I recognize, and I hope you recognize, is, hey, I know that 4 times 100 is 400, and that's really easy for me to work with. So I'm gonna divide this, since the 400 is gonna take up most of this rectangle because it's the bigger part. I'm gonna put my 400 here, and then I have an unknown number here, which you probably already know what that is, but I'm just for showing you the steps, I'm gonna leave that out for now. So, what number do I know that if I multiply by 4, I get 400? And that number is, of course, 100. So that's that's a partial quotient, okay? That's one part of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and draw this again, and again, if this is not necessary for you to draw it again and again and again, you don't have to, all right? So I have my 400, I have 100 times 4 is 400, so I already have one of my numbers that I can subtract from my original dividend. So 428 minus 400 leaves me with 28, which is of course what goes in this other box. And some of you may have already noticed that. You may have said, oh, I can break 428 into 428, and those are both really easy numbers for me to work with the factor 4, because I know what I need to multiply 4 times to get 28. So do you know? What number am I missing here? I hope you said 7, because 7 times 4 is 28. Okay, so if I take this 28, and so I've got that part, and I go ahead and subtract what I had left, I'm gonna get 0, and I'm finished, okay? So I'm gonna add these two numbers together, these two factors, that are gonna give me my quotient, which is easy math, 107. So that's my answer. And I'm gonna come back up here and write my answer on the line, okay? So you have some problems today that are going to ask you to use the first strategy, which is the partial quotient, where you do it down the line. There's another set of questions that is going to ask you to try this strategy. If you are comfortable doing those, trying both of those out, then do that. If one of these clicks with you and makes sense and the other one doesn't, then use the one that makes sense. All right, that's what I want you to do. I always give you permission to do that in class. So I do need to see your work on these problems though, and sadly there's not enough space in your book to actually show me that. So if you'll do those on notebook paper, and then make sure you put the number of the problem next to it so I know which one you're working out and I can see your work, then that gets you that partial credit that I can give you points for, even if you mess up along the way with addition or subtraction or something, okay? I love and miss you guys so much. I wish that we were in the classroom, because that's how I tell whether you're getting it or not. And by video, I have no idea. So if this is helpful, let me know. If it's not, say, Miss Prickett, you're wasting your time. I love you guys. Bye.